So again, I want to talk to you about what it says on our money, our nation's money. It says, "In God we trust," and I want to bring a little history behind it. And but first of all, I want to look at some scripture on why our country has decided to use that as the nation's motto. And so we're going to look in Psalm 33:12. And it says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. Blessed is the nation that trusts in God." That's worth paying attention to, not only as a people, but as a nation. And then we read in Jeremiah 17:7, "Blessed is the man, blessed is the nation, blessed is the man that trusts in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is." And so two statements, blessed is the nation and blessed is the man that has learned by faith to trust in God. And then we read in Psalm 9, verse 17, "The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all nations that forget God." So we can we say, cursed is the nation that has forgotten God? And they do. There are nations on the face of this earth right now that have nothing to do with God. Jeremiah 17:5 says, "Thus saith the Lord, cursed is the man that trusts in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departs from the Lord." Cursed is the man. Ned preached about a subject through Jeremiah 17, and it touched my heart, and I wanted to bring a message from continuing from what he preached on in Jeremiah 17. And bring it around to why we use the term "in God we trust." And so in Proverbs 3:5 it says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lead on unto thy own understanding." I missed one, didn't I, Zach? Psalm 17, or Jeremiah 17:9, "The heart is deceitful above all things, and desperately wicked. Who can know it, and who can trust it?" And so the thought here is, you can't even trust your own heart. And if you learn that early on in life, but hopefully somewhere along the way, you learn that you can't trust yourself. You can't trust your heart. And it helps you develop the faith you need to learn to trust in God. Trust in God with all your heart, and all your mind, and all your soul, right? Now, I want to narrow this thought down on our nation and "in God we trust." And I want to narrow it down to an ideology that has permeated a lot of countries that don't trust in God. And so we're going to read Proverbs 1, verses 10 through 14. "My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, Come with us, let us lay wait for blood, let us lurk privately for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down to the pit. We shall find all precious substance. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse." That ideology has been around, as we can see here. It's been around for ages. And it's prevalent today in our world. And I'm going to use one example. One purse is like a battle cry. Let's all have one purse. Let's all have one purse where we take from the rich and give to the poor, so we can all be equal. And this ideology was clear back and warned against in Proverbs, but this ideology took hold and swallowed up a country called Russia in 1917. They called themselves the Bolsheviks. Bolshevik in Russia means members of the majority. And there was the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. When they won that battle and took over that country with their ideology, Russia was renamed the USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. What a grand and glorious, positive name. Their battle cry from the beginning was all power to the people, and let everyone have peace, land, and bread. Doesn't that sound nice? Let's all have one purse. Take from the rich and give to the poor. It is an ideology, but what breaks it down is it's based on not believing in God or trusting in Him at all. And so what it has broken down to be and will always be, what happened in that revolution is 12 million people died. It was Ronald Reagan that said it the best way, and I want to quote from him. He said in a speech, "Yes, let us pray for the salvation of all those who live in that totalitarian darkness. Pray they will discover the joy of knowing God. But until they do, let us be aware that while they preach the supremacy of the state, declare its omnipotence over individual man, and predict its eventual domination of all people on the earth, they are the focus of evil in the modern world." My son, be careful when people come to you and say, let's all have one purse. I want to read to you Luke 6, verse 38. Here's what God says. Give. Now, he didn't say, take from the rich and give to the poor. He said, I want you to do this. Give. Kind of skipped over something, didn't he? He said, just give. Give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down and shaken together, running over, shall men give unto your bosom. For with the same measure that you mete, with it shall be measured to you again. The one purse ideology says to take. God says, give. Now I want to give you a little bit of a history. We're just going to leave that verse up there because I'll be closing on that verse. I want to give you a history of a reason why we have that on our money. Every time you look at that money, it should preach a little sermon to you. And hopefully you'll remember something of what I said before you fell asleep during this sermon. But a history behind it. In 1776, 250 years ago, there was the Declaration of Independence. And in that declaration, it said, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them together, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station in which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created. You see, God got put in the Constitution. God got put in the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that is one of the keys to our pursuit in happiness. It's giving. Giving of ourselves. Giving to others. Because we've fallen in love to the one that gave his life for us. That was 250 years ago in 1776. Well, guess what? We had a battle, didn't we? It's called the Revolutionary War. And we won that one, but then we had to fight Britain again. Sometimes we forget that, and that was called the War of 1812. We went to war again. And it was during that battle, when we were again fighting for our freedom, Francis Scott Key wrote our national anthem. And in verse 4 of what our country has chosen to be our national anthem, verse 4 reads like this: "Oh, thus be it ever when free men shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation, blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that has made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, when our cause is just, and this be our motto: in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave." Now in God we trust was mentioned by Francis Scott Key in our national anthem. He wrote it in 1814 during the War of 1812. Then came the Civil War. And during the Civil War, in 1863, there was a pastor that wrote the Secretary of, the Treasury Secretary of the United States. He was a Baptist preacher. His name was Mark Watkinson, Reverend Mark Watkinson. He wrote to the Treasury Secretary, Salmon Chase, and he said this. He proposed a motto on the coin, a 2-cent coin, that would be stamped on the coin recognizing God. And his statement was to Treasury Secretary Chase, "This would make a beautiful coin to which no possible citizen could object. This would relieve us of the ignominy of heathenism." Pastor mentioned that last week, heathenism. "This would place us openly under the divine protection we have personally claimed." And so, "In God We Trust" was actually printed on a coin during the Civil War. And it took effect in 1863. Now, I want to touch home a little bit closer on that history. That is, this church was formed in 1839. This building hadn't been built yet, but the people formed this church in 1839. Francis Scott Key wrote our national anthem in 1863. I want you to think about some of the people that you and I are connected to through the history of this great church. There were members of this church, I would have to say, that remembered the War of 1812. This church. And since this church was formed in 1839 and the Civil War took place in 1863, I can almost be sure that there were some people that fought in the Civil War. And everybody that were members of this church during that time were affected by the Civil War. We have a rich history in this little church here. Stamped on our dollar bill is "In God We Trust," but stamped on the corner of this little town, right here on Commercial Street, and whatever street that is there, on this little corner, is a building that says, "In God We Trust." We don't need another ideology to take over our country. We've settled it a long time. We settled it 250 years ago. And it's been good enough for them. It should be good enough for us. This Bible should be good enough for us. The God we trust in should be good enough for us. And it's not up to us to change what's good enough. It's in God we trust. And then, I got to get all my historical notes here, because I'm dumber than a box of rocks. Then in 1956, Dwight D. Eisenhower, he was a great general in World War II and was instrumental in D-Day for us. And he became president of the United States in 1956. And on July 30th, 1956, he signed a joint resolution officially adopting the statement, "In God We Trust," as the first permanent national motto to be printed on our money, the United States, all of our money. This is what he said. It was during the Cold War. You know what Cold War is? The Cold War is that nobody was shooting each other, in a sense. So it was kind of cold, but it was icy cold. He said, he famously linked the phrase of "In God We Trust" and religious devotion to national security during the Cold War, reflecting on the spiritual character of America. He stated, "In this way, we are reaffirming the transcendence of religious faith in America's heritage and future. In this way, we shall constantly strengthen those spiritual weapons which forever will be our country's most powerful resource in peace and in war." It's never our duty or job to stop believing in God, and we as a church, sometimes we do need to speak out when we hear people talking about things that would turn us from God. One person is an ideology, and one God is the other. I want to say that there are some countries, and we hear hints of it from the Gideon Society. Canada suddenly decided to no longer allow the Gideons to distribute Bibles in Canada. Great Britain has decided that the Gideons can no longer distribute the Bible in their country. And they slip from their ideology. They're slipping away from God, and they quit trusting in God and begin trusting in themselves, trusting in man. And it's a downward slippery slope. May we always be a church that trusts in God. And may we always be a country that trusts in God. And may we be willing to stand for our faith as a people and as a church. May God bless the preaching of His holy word. Let's all stand.